way to get new life out of your stamps. So I'm going to be using the Sending Flowers stamp set from Simon Says Stamp to do some watercolor stamping and creating a really beautiful frame to frame up a sentiment on my card. Now, watercolor stamping can be done with any type of water-based medium, whether that's an ink pad or markers. I'm going to be using Zig Clean color markers today because I want to be able to color different areas of the image with multiple colors of marker. But remember that you can do this with multiple types of markers or inks. So I encourage you to experiment with your different types of water-based mediums to try out the watercolor stamping technique. Before I get started on the watercolor stamping, I'm stamping down a frame from that Sending Flowers stamp set using some clear embossing ink. I'm going to add some gold embossing powder over top, so that way I can heat set the powder on this beautiful frame and create an area that will frame up my sentiment. Now that I have my frame all heat set and ready to go, I'm going to bring in my stamp. I'm going to be coloring this with some Zig Clean color markers, and I'm going to add the color on different areas of the stamp. I'm adding green here to the leaves and the stems of these flowers. I'm also going to add some different colors of pink, yellow, red, and purple onto the flower as well. I'm using the yellow to add some color in towards the center area of the flower. And as I add these markers down onto the stamp, you can see how the image is starting to come together. I'm going to make sure that I add these colors fairly close together so that way when I go to spray that here with my mister bottle, the colors will blend together nicely. The mister bottle I sprayed about 2 times to get a nice even coating of water on top of the image, and then I took it and quickly pressed it down into my watercolored paper panel. I'm pressing this down and holding it in place for about a minute so that way the color has time to adhere to the surface of the paper. So as it's drying, I'm bringing in some more color and adding that on top of my stamp once again, and I'm going to continue this method going totally around my panel to create the watercolored effect. This is so much fun to create watercolored images. It makes it look like you watercolor these images directly onto the card itself, but really it took you only just a couple of minutes to create this entire frame and have a beautiful arrangement of florals. I'm using some markers to color in the centers of the flowers, and I'll blend those out with a water brush. And this took no time at all to go ahead and add the shading onto the center portion of the flowers. Once my images were completely colored in, I also took a bit of teal marker and added that around the edges of the flowers in a speckled pattern so that I could create some extra color around the flowers. You could totally skip this step and just use the flowers as they were, but I like adding a little bit of extra color to things. After my panel was completely colored and ready to go, I'm going to stamp a sentiment inside of that frame. I'm using these really cool big sentiment stamps from Simon. This one says Big Thanks, and I'm going to stamp that down with some embossing ink. After I press that down good, I'm going to then add some gold embossing powder on top, and then I'll be able to heat set this and have a beautiful embossed sentiment that matches my frame. I'm going to stamp a supporting sentiment underneath the word Big Thanks in some Hot Mama ink. This is a beautiful purple that matched the purple colors in my Zig Clean color markers nicely. By using an embossing ink pad and smushing this along the edges of my panel, that's going to give the surface an area that the heat embossing powder will be able to stick to. The reason I'm doing this is so that way I can create a beautiful embossed edge to this panel that perfectly matches the sentiment and the embossed frame in the center of the card. This finishes off the panel beautifully and creates a very elegant look. I heat set that to make sure that the powder was completely melted along the edges, and then I attach that down onto a white cardstock base. Finally, I'm bringing in some Nouveau Jewel drops in both yellow and orange and adding that randomly across each of the flowers to create a dimensional center. You could skip this step and just leave the flowers as they were, but I wanted to add a little bit of extra embellishing. I also added some dot detailing using a gel pen. This is a white Signal Broad gel pen, and just added some dot details to the centers of the flowers as well. So that's a quick look at how easy watercolor stamping can be and how you can create beautiful watercolored effects in no time at all. I hope that today's video has inspired you to try out some watercolor stamping of your own. If you enjoyed, I encourage you to subscribe to our channel to learn more fun techniques such as this. Thanks so much for stopping by and spending some time with me. I will see you again very soon.